Chapter 1 Newborn. The cold air lapped at his soft hair, now free of the warm incubation that had sustained him for nearly 11 months. This amorphous sack of liquid and foal was now spilling out over his mother's hooves onto the straw bedding. Her legs were wobbly, and she could barely support her own weight under the onslaught of contractions as they squeezed around this being that was coming through her hind quarters. She fell to the ground with a loud thud. Her head slammed into the ground, causing a cloud of dust to rise up around her body. She attempted to rise, but found she was unable to gather the energy required to get back to her hooves. Warm fluid continued to pour from between her hind legs, pooling on the stable floor beneath her. The straw felt cool on her stomach. In fact, everything seemed cool. Everything came into focus with an alarming clarity as the pain began to flood from the back of her skull, down through her spine, and into every muscle of her body. It pulled all other thoughts and rationalities out of her mind and threw them into one big mess in front of her. She knew if she gave up now, it would not only be her life that ended, but the life that was currently pressing hard against her bones and flesh, seeking an escape from this madness. She mustered all her strength to push, which freed his bony shoulders, leaving only the long black body and hindquarters. Before her anguish was over, 2 more excruciating pushes freed his body from hers. With a sharp breath, she lifted her head to see the long, black, sleek outline of her new son. At that moment he turned and lifted his head, jet black with a white patch at the center of his forehead, like a solo star shining in the emptiness of space. In that moment, mother and son connected. Her head fell back onto the soft straw as she gave a satisfied grunt and took in one last breath. The black colt lay still for some time while processing the smells of his new environment. The sweet smell of straw tickled his nostrils, and he snorted, drawing in another deep breath to drink in its delicious musk. Another scent broke through the aroma of hay and cotton, that of warm skin and blood. Instinctively, he raised his head to look at his surroundings and blinked his eyes several times to absorb what light he could from the darkness. He stretched out both of his long black forelegs and hitched his hind legs underneath his body, giving him the purchase to raise his hindquarters. When the rest of his weight transferred to the front, he then raised his front legs and tried to stand. His legs were too close together. He toppled over and lay on his side in the straw, trying to understand what had happened. He blinked at the dust that rose from the straw bedding. On the second attempt, he splayed his front legs apart even further than before, giving himself more balance. His front hooves trembled, but he stood tall and proud for a moment, not daring to move. He took a deep breath, tensing his muscles to take the first step. He gritted his teeth as he forced each of his near forelegs and then his hind legs through the dense straw one at a time. Momentum started to build as he moved faster with each successive step. In an instant, he lurched forward out of control, crashing into the wall on the other side of the stable with a loud thud. The jarring impact sent a sharp pain shooting through his shoulder. He cringed in pain before regaining his composure and slowly adjusting to the new sensation. He placed a tentative hoof upon the straw and stepped forward once more. He moved in a peculiar mincing gait, reaching out with his muzzle to touch everything he could sense before him. His nostrils flared with each breath, searching for the familiar scent of his mother, which he had detected earlier. He followed it slowly, until eventually he came upon her near to the back of the stable. He felt along her body with his whiskers, her hind legs, her flanks, her stomach, and finally her head. She was warm to his touch, but she made no sound. There was no welcoming whinny or the comforting rise and fall of her body as she breathed. His heart plummeted as he realized something was horribly wrong. How could he live without her? Without someone to comfort him, keep him warm, feed him, and teach him about the world he had entered? Sadness filled his small body. The colt's legs gave way beneath him, and he sank to the floor, his eyes wide with fear. His mother lay lifeless beside him, never once nudging her newborn son towards her awaiting udder for his first vital drink of milk. Without it, his chances of survival were slim. The foal grew weaker as the hours passed, until finally his body slipped into a state of stillness, and he slowly began to drift away from life. Suddenly, he felt a warm, brilliant white light envelop him. As he opened his eyes, the light seemed to part to reveal an equally radiant white stallion. The majestic creature stood with its head bowed low in reverence as it neared him, nudging him with his muzzle. The colt felt the warmth of its breath on his skin as it spoke. "Little one, you have been blessed with life, and your mother has gone through a great sacrifice in order for you to live." Its voice was soothing yet firm, and its words echoed off the walls like a song. "You must get up and drink the milk of life," the white stallion said in a voice that grew increasingly stern. The colt shifted uncomfortably beneath his straw bed, burying his head further into it with each passing second. "But why?" he asked weakly, not wanting to follow orders, but battling with an inner desire to be obedient. The magnificent white stallion tossed his powerful head, a tempest of anger surging through him as he stared down at the trembling foal. "For your mother's sake," he thundered, his voice a fierce gale, "you must fight to live. Did she sacrifice her very life for you to wither away in despair?" His tone softened just enough to cut through the tension, yet still laced with urgency. "You were born into the arms of a compassionate human family, ones who will nurture you with love, warmth, and sustenance that your mother can no longer provide. You are destined for greatness, with myriad paths awaiting your discovery, each filled with ecstasy and sorrow alike. But you stand on the precipice of oblivion now. Abandon this fight, and those wonders will slip from your grasp forever." He paused, eyes burning like twin suns before turning away, striding towards the beckoning light in the distance, leaving behind an echo of hope tangled with despair. The colt's eyes widened in fear as he desperately called out to the retreating stallion, his voice filled with desperation and panic. "No, don't leave me. I can't do this alone." The stallion came to a halt and turned back towards the colt, his powerful hooves digging into the ground with determination. "I will return when you need me most, or when the gods demand it," he declared. "Just call my name," he commanded. "But what is your name?" begged the colt, trembling with uncertainty. "You shall know my name when fate deems it necessary," the stallion replied, before vanishing into the light, leaving the colt alone with nothing but a sense of foreboding. The colt felt a sudden rush of energy coursing through him, igniting a desperate need to find his mother's milk. With determination etching his features, he shifted his hindquarters beneath his body and strained to rise. However, as he pushed with his front legs, they buckled under him, sending him tumbling forward in a clumsy roll. Dazed and disoriented, he lay sprawled on the ground, the cool earth grounding him in reality. Luckily, he had landed against his mother's soft belly. Instinctively, he nuzzled her warm flank, his tiny nose seeking out the familiar scent of nourishment. The rich, sweet aroma wafted from her teats, urging him to move closer for that life-sustaining first meal. He stretched his neck as far as it could go, but still found himself just out of reach. With a flick of his tongue, he managed to brush the tip of one teat, and the taste of bittersweet milk danced across his palate, a tantalizing promise. Realizing he had to close the gap, he summoned every ounce of strength left in his little limbs. Inch by inch, he propelled himself along her side, feeling her warmth seep into him as time pressed on. The comforting weight of her body grew colder beneath him as he drew nearer. Finally, with a grunt of effort and relief, his head wedged snugly between her hindquarters. In this newfound position, he nestled comfortably and latched onto one of her teats. Warmth flooded over him as he began to drink. Each gulp filled him not only with sustenance, but also hope. The milk was rich and thick, invigorating him with every swallow as he instinctively searched for vital antibodies during these crucial early days. Yet even as he drank deeply, an awareness crept in. He would need much more than this to thrive beyond just today. As the sun slowly ascended above the horizon, its golden rays shimmered and danced upon the calm sea, creating a mirror-like reflection. The shadows of the night receded, replaced by the warm embrace of daylight that gently melted away the thin layer of frost blanketing the ground. The colt, with his sleek black coat and alert ears, suddenly pricked them forward and then back as an unfamiliar sound reached his sensitive ears. It was the clinking of a door latch being lifted and the eerie creaking of a door being opened, followed by a burst of sunlight flooding into the stable. Instinctively, he flicked his ears back and forth and took in deep breaths through his nostrils, searching for any signs of danger. But he was too weak to flee, and there was nowhere for him to go, so he remained still and quiet, listening intently to the footsteps on the cobblestone floor. The chickens inside the byre immediately began their usual morning chorus of "Grain, grain, we want grain," as more light flooded into their home from the newly opened window shutters. A grumpy goat added to the cacophony with its bleating protest. "Shut up, you greedy feathered excuses for birds. It's the same old story every morning. Give it a rest." But the hens paid no attention to the annoyed goat as they continued to demand their breakfast. The colt could hear them repeating their plea over and over again, but he also detected the soft shuffling of cows in their stalls and the thumping of their hooves against the ground. A contented purr from a cat somewhere in the byre could also be heard amidst all these sounds. As Morna flung open yet another set of shutters, filling the space with even more daylight, she paused and listened carefully. The colt, now surrounded by silence except for the occasional cooing of pigeons above and the sporadic clucking of hens, rustled in his straw bed as he stretched out his legs that were starting to ache from being tucked underneath him for so long. At that moment, Morna called out to someone named Castania before all fell silent once again. Feeling a sense of panic and despair, the colt thought to himself, "Oh no, I've given myself away." He had no idea what danger may be approaching him now. He could hear the latch on the stable door being unlatched, and he braced himself for whatever was to come. But still, he remained motionless and quiet as the footsteps grew closer and closer. Morna stepped inside the dimly lit stable, her heart sinking as she saw Castania lying on her side at the back of the stall, cold and still. Shadows danced across the wooden beams above, accentuating the lifelessness of the mare. As she stood frozen in shock, a wave of dread surged through her, twisting painfully in the pit of her stomach. She rushed forward, urgency propelling her to kneel beside Castania's head, lifting it gently onto her knees, despite the risk of soiling her silk dress. The mare's coat felt alarmingly cold against Morna's skin, and a grim realization crashed over her like icy water. Her beloved mare was dead. Tears streamed down her cheeks, warm rivers flowing from a heart that ached with sorrow. As despair washed over her, an instinctive glance towards Castania's belly caught Morna's attention. There it was, a black foal nestled against the mare's hindquarters, hidden until now. Hope flickered in her chest as she tenderly placed Castania's head back onto the straw before crawling on all fours through the soft bedding towards the fragile little creature. With trembling hands, she pressed one palm against the foal's neck while nestling her wet cheek next to its nostrils. A miraculous faint breath brushed against her skin. The colt was still alive. Joy surged in her veins, mingling with trepidation for its survival. With renewed determination, she leapt to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her as she dashed out of the stable, narrowly avoiding tripping over a bucket of chaff and skipping past clucking hens that had descended upon their unexpected feast. Bursting into the yard, she shouted desperately, "Help me! Help me!" Two stable boys came rushing towards her from various directions, but before they could question what was amiss, she urged them breathlessly, "Quickly! Get some blankets and fetch the Finwife immediately." Without hesitation, both boys sprinted off in different directions. Left standing alone in the midst of the yard, Morna struggled to calm herself and decided that she must return to comfort the foal. What is it, a boy or girl?" Her thoughts raced as she hurried back into the byre. To her amazement, the colt had risen to his unsteady legs and was approaching her cautiously, sniffing at the air around him. She instinctively extended a hand toward his mouth, whereupon he began suckling eagerly at her fingers. Pulling him close to her bosom, she whispered softly, "You must be so hungry, little one. We need to find you some milk." Just then, one of the stable boys entered, carrying blankets draped over his arm. Morna eagerly accepted one from him and carefully laid it over the colt's back, tucking it up around his neck as if swaddling a newborn child. "There you go, my pet," she cooed warmly. "That should keep you snug and warm." Looking beneath his belly to see what precious gift Castania had brought forth into this world, filled with grief and hope alike, Morna gasped with surprise. "Oh!" she exclaimed joyfully. "You're a little boy, then." Turning to face the stable boy once more with determination gleaming in her eyes, she instructed urgently yet tenderly, "Can you milk the goats for me? We need fresh, warm nutrition for him." The stable boy nodded quickly in understanding and turned away to lift a small wooden bucket from its perch among the rafters before proceeding diligently to milk the goats tied up within their stalls. After a brief moment that felt like an eternity filled with anticipation and worry for her new charge's welfare, he returned holding a bucket brimming with creamy goat's milk. Handing it carefully to Morna elicited a grateful smile from her. "Thank you," she said earnestly, before adding anxiously, yet hopefully, with wide eyes scanning for any sign of help beyond their immediate surroundings. "Can you see if the Finwife is coming yet?" Morna reached for the heavy clay jug perched on the sun-warmed window ledge, her fingers brushing against the cool, smooth surface. The silk of her once ornate dress hung heavily, now tattered and stained with blood and remnants from the morning's drama. With a swift motion, she tore the hem of her dress, transforming it into a makeshift sheath for the jug. The delicate fabric felt foreign against her calloused hands as she ripped strips of lace to secure it tightly. Stepping into the dimly lit stable, Morna crouched beside the small foal nestled in the straw. She extended her hand, adorned with the silken cover, and whispered softly, "Come, little one, and drink some lovely warm milk." The colt's ears perked up at the sound of her gentle voice. He cautiously stretched his neck forward, curiosity overtaking his initial hesitation. As he latched onto her fingers with his warm mouth, she swiftly swapped them for the improvised silk teat. His face twisted in displeasure at the unfamiliar taste of sour goat's milk, and he recoiled momentarily. Yet soon after, as warmth filled his belly, a sense of comfort washed over him. Eagerly he returned to Morna's side, nudging closer and stretching out again to find that precious teat. "Steady," she cautioned softly, watching as he gulped greedily and began to take larger mouthfuls with each suckle. A feeling of serenity settled over them both in that quiet corner of the stable as they shared this fragile bond. Once the jug was emptied and set down softly on a bed of fragrant straw, something caught her eye. A small arrow-shaped flintstone lay partially hidden among the golden strands. Intrigued, she bent down to examine it closely. Strange markings were etched across its surface, drawing her in with an otherworldly allure. Noticing how peculiar it was, she tucked it carefully into a small bib pocket within her dress before adjusting the colt's blanket gently around him. Moments later, the two stable boys appeared, leading in an old, wizened lady. Her steps were slow and deliberate as she made her way towards Morna. She was draped in a thick black cloak that obscured her features and gave off an aura of mystery. Morna stood up from where she had been gently stroking the colt's neck and beckoned the old lady closer. "Please," she said with urgency, "come and take a look at my mare. I need to know how she passed away." The old woman's eyes, hidden beneath the deep hood of her cloak, seemed to gleam with an otherworldly wisdom as she approached Castania's lifeless form. The stable boys watched in hushed awe, sensing the gravity of the moment as Lady Morna awaited the Finwife's verdict. With a slow and deliberate movement, the Finwife knelt beside the mare, her gnarled hands hovering over Castania's still body. A palpable silence descended upon the stable, broken only by the soft rustling of straw and the occasional shifting of the colt beside Morna. After what felt like an eternity, the Finwife finally spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from far-off realms. "This was no ordinary passing, Lady Morna. Dark forces have been at work here, shadows that seek to disrupt the balance of nature." Her words hung heavy in the air, sending a shiver down Morna's spine. The stable boys exchanged uneasy glances before returning their attention to the scene unfolding before them. "What do you suggest we do?" Morna questioned, her voice shaking slightly as she held the foal close against her chest. The Finwife's gaze sharpened, her gaze fixed on the little creature nestled against Morna's body. "The life force of this child is strong, stronger than what killed his mother, but it is also fragile." She paused, her fingers running gently over the foal's flank. "We must protect him." Morna's expression turned solemn, her eyes filled with steely determination. A sudden thought crossed her mind, and she reached into her pocket, retrieving a small arrow flint. Holding it up to the Finwife, she asked with a sense of urgency, "What do you make of this flint?" "I found it lying by my mare's side." The sun glinted off the smooth surface of the flint, casting a fiery glow over Morna's determined face. She held her breath, waiting for the Finwife's response. The old lady's steps were slow and deliberate as she approached Morna, her hands reaching up to lower the hood from her head. As the fabric fell away, it revealed long black hair, intricately woven with strands of shimmering grey. She gently took the stone flint from Morna's outstretched hand, studying it with a practiced eye. The wrinkles on her face seemed to deepen as she focused intently on the object, her expression betraying both curiosity and wisdom accumulated over many years. With a low, rumbling hum that seemed to resonate throughout the stable, the Finwife's voice broke the silence once more. "This is no ordinary flint, Lady Morna. It carries an ancient enchantment, one that dates back to the days of the old ones." Her words sent a shiver down Morna's spine as she listened intently, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "The markings upon this stone speak of a power long forgotten by most," the Finwife continued, her gaze never leaving the flint. "It is an arrowhead flint. Your mare was trow shot." Morna's breath caught in her throat as she absorbed the weight of the Finwife's words. She glanced down at the colt nestled against her, his innocent eyes gazing up at her with trust and vulnerability. "What does this mean for him?" she asked. The Finwife's expression turned grave as she reached out to touch the colt's forehead gently. "The trow arrow carries with it a curse, one that seeks to extinguish the life force of its target and all who are connected to it," she explained solemnly. Morna's heart clenched in fear for the young foal cradled in her arms, his warmth a stark contrast to the chill of the revelation. "We must act swiftly and decisively to protect him," the Finwife continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dark forces will be drawn to him, seeking to fulfill the curse woven into the arrowhead." Morna felt a surge of determination rise within her, fueled by a fierce protectiveness towards the vulnerable creature in her care. As the gravity of their situation settled over them like a shadow, the stable boys exchanged worried glances, understanding the magnitude of the threat they faced. The colt shifted restlessly against Morna, sensing the tension in the air. His ears flicked nervously as if he could sense the impending danger that loomed over him. Morna tightened her grip on the foal, a steely resolve hardening in her gaze as she turned to the Finwife. "What must we do to protect him from this curse?" Morna's voice quivered slightly, but her determination rang clear. The Finwife's aged face was a mask of concentration as she pondered the situation. After a moment of contemplation, she spoke in a low, measured tone. "The trow arrow's curse is potent and will attract malevolent forces. We must shield him with ancient magic that has long been forgotten by mortals." Morna's heart raced at the mention of ancient magic, a mix of fear and hope swirling within her. She nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. "I will do whatever it takes to safeguard him." The Finwife's eyes sparkled with an enigmatic glint of approval as she reached into the deep folds of her cloak, producing a small pouch adorned with intricate embroidery. Symbols danced and shimmered in the dim light of the stable, as if they had been woven with threads of starlight. She held it out to Morna, who accepted it with a reverent touch, sensing the weight of centuries-old magic thrumming within its confines. "Within this pouch lies the essence of protection," the Finwife declared, her voice imbued with a solemn authority that seemed to echo off the wooden beams of the stable. Morna's heart raced as she plunged her hand into the pouch, retrieving a small round stone that resembled quartz, its surface glistening like frost-kissed leaves in early morning light. Without warning, the Finwife withdrew a knife glinting menacingly in the shadows and began to slice through a portion of the mare's tail. "What are you doing?" Morna screamed, panic surging through her veins as the stable boys rushed forward, seizing hold of the old woman with an urgency born from instinct. "I am saving the life of the newborn," replied the Finwife calmly, her voice steady despite the chaos. Morna gestured toward the boys to release her. They complied reluctantly, but watched warily as the Finwife started to braid the severed tail into a strong rope. As she worked, she mumbled incantations that drifted through the air like wisps of smoke, enigmatic and potent. With practiced hands, she threaded one end of the braided tail through a hole in the center of the stone. weaving them together seamlessly while her lips moved rhythmically in whispered invocation. Finally, she held up her creation, a Dian stane, glimmering softly in her weathered hands. "Take this, place it around your newborn's neck. It will grant him divine protection against any further danger from the trows." Morna stretched out her hand to receive this remarkable gift and gently fastened it around the colt's slender neck. Just as she opened her mouth to speak again, the old woman interjected sharply, "Now listen carefully to my words. The newborn is special and must fulfill an important destiny. The trow's interest in him suggests great peril stemming from his mother's demise. As long as he wears this Dian stane, they will fear him and leave him be." "What is trow shot?" Morna asked once more, curiosity mingling with unease. The Finwife shot Morna a look rife with disdain for interrupting her solemn instructions, but pressed on nonetheless. "The trows have not unleashed their malicious weapons for many years, not since the dwarf Snorro was banished from these lands. The flint arrowhead you possess caused internal bleeding to your animal with malicious intent, to kill both her and her foal." Her gaze locked onto Morna's, heavy with unspoken knowledge and gravity, urging understanding amidst overwhelming uncertainty. Morna felt a surge of gratitude towards the old woman, her eyes brimming with unshed tears at the thought of the sacrifice and ancient wisdom being entrusted to her. She clutched the pouch tightly against her chest, a silent vow forming in her heart to shield the colt at all costs. As if sensing the weight of their conversation, the colt nuzzled against Morna's hand, seeking comfort in her touch. His innocent eyes reflected both trust and vulnerability, a testament to the bond that had formed between them in a short span of time. The air in the stable seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, as if the ancient magic woven into the Dian stane was already at work, casting a protective veil over the colt. Morna stood tall, her gaze unwavering as she turned to the Finwife. Gratitude and determination etched into her features. "I will guard him with my life, if need be," she vowed solemnly, her voice carrying the weight of her promise. The Finwife nodded approvingly, her eyes softening for a brief moment before returning to their usual steely demeanor. As the tension in the stable began to ebb, Morna could feel a sense of purpose settling within her, mingling with a newfound sense of responsibility towards the colt and his mysterious destiny. She knew that their fates were now intertwined in ways she couldn't yet comprehend, bound by threads of fate and ancient magic that pulsed around them like a heartbeat. The stable boys watched in awe, their expressions a mix of reverence and fear for the powerful forces at play. Morna cast a final glance at the Finwife, her gratitude unspoken yet profound, before turning her attention back to the colt nestled against her. With deliberate care, she adjusted the Dian stane around the colt's neck, feeling the thrum of ancient magic beneath her fingertips. The colt seemed to sense the change in his surroundings, his demeanor shifting from restlessness to a quiet calm that belied his tender age. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now held a glimmer of something deeper, an understanding that surpassed mere mortal comprehension. As Morna stroked his velvety coat, a sense of serenity washed over her, grounding her in the present moment amidst the tumultuous events that had unfolded. The Finwife's words echoed in her mind. With a final nod of acknowledgement, the Finwife turned to leave the stable, her form disappearing into the shadows cast by the flickering lamplight. Morna watched her go, a sense of gratitude and apprehension swirling within her like the winds that howled outside. Morna's voice echoed through the dimly lit byre as she called out to the woman walking away from her. "Wait, I have not properly thanked you or offered payment for your services." The woman turned back towards her, her expression calm and unfazed. "Pieces of silver will suffice," she replied with a confident smile. "That will keep my Finman happy." She continued walking towards the door, the sound of her footsteps echoing against the walls. Morna nodded to the stable boys, signaling for them to reward the woman as she had requested. As she received her payment, the woman turned and asked, "Have you thought of a name for him yet, my lady?" Morna paused, watching as the woman gracefully accepted her reward. "No, not yet," she finally replied. "We will let the coming days reveal more about this little survivor before we give him a name." Morna couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity and wonder about the mysterious woman who had just helped save their newest member of the family.